This is Sandy in another authentic exploration of a topic. Al and I are talking about our relationship to ourselves. Let's cut that and start again. I am talking to Al about how I feel about doing these recordings or putting together a podcast series. There's something that's different with the energy when I would say, well, you know, when you feel this way, this is what happens, versus if I said, when I feel this way, here's what happens. And I was telling Al that I'm putting together this podcast series and I want to be able to have fun with it, and I'm doing it just because it'll make me happy. At the same time, I do hope that people will listen to it and find it interesting. And then I'm immediately feeling guilty that it's about me. So I'm assuming that other people might feel this way too. I want to explore that and maybe see where it's coming from or come to some new realizations about why that trigger is happening.
It's pretty easy for me to sit back and witness this and recognize this as a tape in your head. Just a loop that says, only speak when spoken to, only talk about yourself if very specifically asked to. I can think of all kinds of tapes in my head, and one of them, a great example, is from my mother. She talked about this exchange student that came from Finland and stayed at our house. And he had a Finnish saying, and she spoke fluent Finnish, but she translated it for me. And the translation was, open up the window, self-praise stinks. And I recall hearing that, and always wondering. And so now I have this tape in my head that says, well, as soon as I talk about myself in a certain way, a positive light about something I've done good or done well, all of a sudden, here comes that rolled tape of my mother saying, open up the window, self-praise stinks. I would imagine in your particular case, there's some tape like that. I'm sure you could probably pull up 1, 2, or 3, or 5 stories that might or might not. I don't know, but again, that's where I think it comes from.
I do have a bunch of those tapes in my head, and I am completely willing to take them out and look at them, to observe them, hopefully neutralize them, and not have the same reaction in the future. Though I do know from experience that typically when there's a tape, depending on how strong that program is, sometimes it comes out at various intervals, and looking at it one time isn't enough to solve that issue. But you did bring up a good point just a minute ago, Al, when you were equating the telling of a story about each of us individually, my story, as being what people really want to tune into. There's a book that Apollo Ono wrote, and it's all about him. And it's interesting because it's all about him. So I could sit here and say, well, of course, a book about him would be interesting because he's an interesting kind of a guy. Yet, for some reason, I don't necessarily turn that tape around and look at me. So I think it's a really interesting phenomenon. That it is what people want to know. They want to know about how I feel versus me using words like how we feel, because you can't attach yourself emotionally to that type of a thought as easily.
Imagine for a minute that Apollo Ono book, which is a phenomenal autobiography. Imagine that book if it was simply stories about other people. And he never talked about his struggle and his challenge and the physical things that he put himself through and how he felt about it and how he faced his own demons and how he went after that. What if that book was, yeah, I did this race with Jim, Bob, and Joe. They did this, and this. And then Susan, blah, 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 did this. And all he talked about was other people. How interesting would that be? Probably not nearly as interesting as him telling the story of what he physically went through to create this amazing series run in the Olympics and all of the program, everything that he had to do to get there and how he had to overcome all of his own challenges. That's what we relate to, and it's that story of him that we relate to us, because what happened when you read that book? You could tell it in your own words. Oh, Al needs to read this book. Oh, Al needs to read this book. Oh, Al. Because you saw things that would resonate with me. And you gave me the book and it blew me away. And the reality was, you're absolutely right. His story relating to him and his life is what impacted my life. Why would it be any different for you? Because what you've done in your life and the things you've accomplished and the amazing things that have happened in your life create who you are. And those things are the things that you can help other people with, because you've been there. And if you can do it, geez, maybe I could do it too.
That is something to think about, and I look forward to exploring this more while consciously making the shift to rewrite my tape that is telling me if it's all about me, it's not okay. Wanting to be empowered to share my story because I think it'll be fun for me and hopefully for you as the listener, yet it's not entirely comfortable. So join me on this journey of self-discovery as I share my stories, hoping to enlighten and inspire, while at the same time looking at some of those triggers that I have.
Can I give you an example? This is kind of something that I learned, and feel the energy shift, the difference. I learned Les Brown is, a lot of people know, is an amazing motivational speaker. And at the end of his speech, he gives this great oratory, if you want a thing bad enough. And I would listen to him say it over and over and over, and therefore I wanted to learn it. And let me give you just the first couple lines in one context and then put it in another. So it goes like this. If you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, up your time, your peace, and your sleep for it. If all you dream and scheme, and it goes on and on and on like that, you. What about this? If I want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up my time, my peace, and my sleep for it, if all that I dream and scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, where's the difference? There's a huge shift in the difference of if you want something, because now it detaches you from whatever it is. But if I say, if I want a thing bad enough, and it's that same thing, we're just so conditioned to go, oh, you this, you that, instead of going, my life is about me. And that was a big shift, because I don't know, and those that know me have probably seen me give that little thing many times. And I would say it, and to an audience, it's like putting it out there. But until I turned it around and said, if I want a thing bad enough, that's when it hit home. That's when its impact was there. So here forward, if you hear me give that in front of other people, it's going to be about me, because if it's about me, it's about you. If it's about you, it's me preaching to you. If it's about me, it's me talking about my experience that you have. Something to think about.
I like it. It is definitely more empowering. I feel the difference, and I hope that I'm able to live the difference by the words that I choose to share the stories that I share with people. That's good stuff. Till next time.